if Kim wants to start us off, tell us a little bit about how he came to be in Lubbock, Texas. I think that's a good start. And while he's telling that story, I think we should all drink wine number one. For those of you that picked them up, this is the Old Vine Chenin Blanc from Kim. It's one of my all-time favorite wines with seafood. And in the summertime, I find lots of excuses to drink it. So, Kim, wherever you want to start, the show is yours.
Well, I'm in Lubbock, Texas, because my mom and dad were professors at Texas Tech, and my father is the modern-day founder of the Texas wine industry that we have today.
Excuse me, Kim, could I just ask everybody to please mute? Thank you.
Me too.
No. No.
And so I came back out of California in 1980 from Provence Vineyards and started working with my dad in Texas. I did go back to California in about 1990 because I got tired of it over here. But then I got drawn back to Texas by a friend of mine who had a bank that took over a winery, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I came back and have raised two girls. He put them through college, which was an incredible thing. And then I have a wife from California who has her own winery. Actually, I'm looking at it. It's across the street from mine. But it's mainly a bistro. She's from half Spanish. Her dad's from Zaragoza, and her mother's from Mexico. So she has a tapas restaurant and a winery. And so we're all in the wine business. My oldest daughter, unfortunately, was just going for her master somm exam in July, and they called it off. It was a very sad thing, but they're going to keep doing it. So at some point, she'll be a master somm. And she lives in Napa with her lawyer husband, who's he's a beverage lawyer. So he works for a firm that does wine law and buys and acquires vineyards and does all this stuff. It's kind of a funny little story is that I do a wine called TX from Dave Finney, which is a locations wine, and Gallo bought it. And I didn't think that we were going to continue it, but we are continuing it. So I am a co-packer for Gallo. But whenever they bought it from Dave, I was going to have my son-in-law look at the big contract they gave me. And he said, we can't because we represented Dave Finney. So that's what he does, kind of stuff like that. And anyway, so I've been doing this. I started doing warm climate varietals. I learned that through Tony Soder, who's in Oregon. He's one of my mentors about doing warm climate fruit. So we don't do Cabernet or Chardonnay or Merlot or Sauvignon Blanc or Gewürztraminer or Riesling. We do stuff like Chenin Blanc, which is sort of a cooler climate stuff, but we do Viognier, Roussanne, Marsanne, Picpoul Blanc, and we do a few Italian varietals, Vermentino, but you know, in the Rhone region, it's called Roll. And we do a little bit of Trebbiano every now and then, but mainly it's the warm climate stuff. So that's what we hang our hat on. And I guess because I've been doing this for so many years in Texas and trying to get Texas where, you know, I've been up there 7 years now, Nick, I think. And I'm one of the only wineries that go out of state with my wines. And so this is the second year I've been a semifinalist for the James Beard Award for a winery. And I hope it's because what I'm trying to do in Texas, I'm trying to promote Texas wines and what we're doing over here. So I don't know, but they called that off too. So we'll find out one day. But anyway, I've been with Siema up there, like I said, for 7 years. I love coming to the East Coast. And it's just a blast up there. People enjoy the wines, and I've kind of got a following now. I think, Nick, don't I? Do I? Or I don't know.
I think when you charm the pants off of the State Department and they bug us every month, is he coming back? Is he coming back? I think that's a sign when you do it across a couple administrations.
I love
There's a few people that like you.
We were drinking in the back with those chefs. That was kind of fun, wasn't it? They took, this is a true story. They took us to this room he goes, no, nobody gets to see this stuff. They had a couch in there that was roped off. It was worth $1 million. I don't know where it came from, but pretty neat looking couch, but $1 million? I don't know. But that was fun. So anyway, I like coming up there. The Chenin Blanc, this is one of Andy Meyer's favorites for Jose Andres. And so I think they still use it according to Andrew Stover. But this is a vineyard that's 40 years old now. And in terms of vineyard age, that's not really old, but it's fairly old for us. And a little Spanish guy named Joe Vasquez has this vineyard, and we only get about 6 tons of grapes off this thing. I think there's about 9 acres, so it's very low yielding, and we can call it old vine. Now, you'll notice on the label that I do put dry, because we have a lot of Chenin Blancs out there, and a lot of them are sweet. So I put dry on there just to sort of make that known to people, so if they're thinking they're going to get a sweet one, they're not going to get a sweet wine. So this is all stainless. We do keep it on the leaves for quite a long time. We do stir them, so it does have some oiliness, thickness to it, and a great mouthfeel. It's 100% Chenin. And up here on the high plains, we're 3,500 feet up, and we have a very good diurnal, switch in the daytime. Last night it got down to 57 degrees, but it went up to 90 today. So we do have the heating and the cooling, so it does retain a lot of its acid. So has everybody got a sip of this one?
Which one is it?
We're drinking the Old Vine Chenin Blanc.
Right there. Oh, you've got the 18. I've got the 17. The 18 is beautiful.
It's excellent.
Well, they're all beautiful, Kim. And again, I think the really cool thing that Tim's doing with all these wines is, while they're not necessarily very familiar grapes for a lot of people, they're very historical grapes, and he presents them in a fashion that is really easy and enjoyable to drink. There's a lot of wine geeky wines out there, or local wines, or geographical wines that everybody says, you have to make an exception for, and not in this case. You can try these from sip one, and they're just something that you fall in love with. They're very food friendly. They're great in the glass. I mean, I'm looking at this wine shining the way it is, and I'm just in heaven. So I'm going to shut off my mute so that I can drink some while Kim talks more.
Well, we don't make a lot of this. We made 600 cases of this, and that's a big production on this one. It's usually around, 380 or 400 cases tops. And so we kind of keep this low. We do use a screw cap. I'm a huge screw cap guy. I find that the wines stay fresher. Maybe a cork, but we do use what we call a Dijon cork out of France, which is an incredible cork when we do cork our wine. So, but there's Pinky right there. That's
Hi,
her.
everybody.
Can we see Pinky?
Everybody, a big round of applause for Miss Pinky. Hooray!
Hi,
Yay!
There she is.
Yes, but we have the beach right behind us. We're on the beach.
I see the mast back there of the boats. Well, welcome. We've been drinking all day. We were worried sick about you. You know it?
Aw, thank you so much for doing this for us today. That was.
Oh,
really
no.
nice.
Thank you for having me. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Oh,
You
good.
got Nick the Knife there to help us. I love that. He's
Hey,
good.
Bruce, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I didn't do it. I'm innocent. So have you ever seen Bosch, Harry Bosch? Have you been watching that? It's a good cop show. Not to talk about cop shows, but it's a good show on Amazon. You should try that.
So,
Okay, what are we drinking next?
So Kim, we've got a little bit more of your rosé that we stole from you a little while back. So we're gonna move on to the Le Copain rosé.
Oh man,
we have all sorts of fun stories that I'm hoping you'll share with us about just Le Copain coming about, how its origin was. And I also have a question for you, because I seem to recall that once upon a time, you told a story about some French wines that were the first thing you ever bought in college, and maybe you hid them somewhere like under your bed.
Maybe. You know, I've been a rosé guy forever, and it's taken a long time in Texas to get rosé started. And now the young people have found they love rosés, which is a good thing. You find rosés everywhere in cans, such, and in kegs. So this rosé, if you'll notice, that's my label is. I wanted a French-looking label, so I had this artist in California, and she came up with this French-looking label for me, say the Le Coupon, which is the friends. So this is a blend. It's always going to be a blend, but the main varietal in this wine is Cinsault. And if you know what Cinsault is, it's the main grape of Provence that goes in all their rosés in some form or fashion, with Grenache, with Carignan. They actually do put a little roll in there, which is Vermentino. It's a white grape, and so we put a little roll in this. I think this one has roll. Sometimes it does. No, this one does not have roll. This one has Grenache and Carignan in it. So, and we do not do Saunier on this. This is a true rosé. We pick these grapes for rosé, and that's it. Now, the Cinsault is grown by two women that look like Marilyn right there. They look like those two women right there. They have their own little 4 acres of Cinsault, and they live right across the street from it. And so that goes into the rosé. We picked that early, 22, 21 and a half, and it's 30 miles from here. So the skin contact time is, I don't know, maybe an hour. And then we go right to the press with it. Now, Cinsault in France is a table grape, and it has a very thick skin and a very pulpy sort of innards of the grape. So it is sort of difficult to press out, but it makes beautiful rosé. You don't get a lot of color. You get your color really from the Grenache or the Carignan. And those varieties are great varieties for here. They love the heat. So this is a Provence style rosé. And look, my guys, I don't have to use, I can have my own glass for each wine. So let's take a sip of this rosé and tell me what you think. It is dry too. We have to do this in Texas. We put dry rosé on there because people think if it's pink then it's going to be sweet, but no, we still do it. You could probably get away with not doing it now, but we dry rosé it. So rosé, and we always put our case production on there. So we did 1,000 cases of this, and that's it. And I hope y'all enjoy this one. It's got beautiful color for rosé and a great flavor. Y'all have any questions out there?
Yeah, so I have a question. So I typically don't like a rosé, but this is, I like this. I think it's because it's dry. It tastes similar to a white.
And it should taste similar to a white, but it should have a little more body sometimes than a white because of the skin contact from a red. And like I said, this is a true rosé. So we don't drain it off a tank like you're making a red wine. You drain some of the juice off to intensify the juice with the skins to get better color. We don't do that. This is boom, a rosé. We put it to the press. It goes right to the tank. We don't use any SO2 on this at the crusher. So this has very little SO2 in it for a number of reasons, because SO2 bleaches out the pretty color if you use it at the crusher. So this has no SO2 except right at bottling, okay? And so because we have a very clean winery, we don't have to use a lot of SO2 in this. So if you're thinking about a lot of SO2, no, not in this. So, and everything that we have is sterile bottled. So what we did make a natural wine for a restaurant called the Queen's English in DC. And did any of y'all ever get to Ethan. It was incredible. He's got a bottle of it. Unfortunately, they're not going to open back up, Nick. So, but your buddy Andrew Stover picked up the rest of it because he's got some people that wanted it. Now that wine, just real quick on that wine, is a Viognier that we made just like a red, but we didn't filter it. And we used natural yeast, so we fermented it on the skins, we pressed it out, lactic, and basically we bottled it. So it is cloudy, it's natural, and it's not going to go anywhere, but no, it's not filtered either. But we're probably going to have to make that again this year. We've had a lot of people ask for that, so we're going to make another natural wine.
Well, you know, Andrew's going to be happy about that. And again,
I know.
Anything you make, if you say natural orange or unfiltered to Andrew, his head almost explodes.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. He calls it, now Kim, can you do? Yeah, we're going to do this. But I did not use my bottling line. I used my bottling line to cork it and label it, but I did not use it to fill it because I didn't want all that yeast and stuff in my filler. Which today we bottled Windblown, Nick, and we did 1,250 cases today. Took us about 6 hours. So we're going to try that one here in a minute.
Absolutely.
Don't have any other questions about rosé? Marilyn, I'm glad you love the rosé. It's now I do make a Sangiovese rosé from my dad's vineyard, which is old Sangiovese from like '84, and it's a real big food rosé. It's, in fact, I had my master som buddy. I was a little, it's like, God, this thing's a big rosé. And he said, Kim, it's like Chateau da-da-da-da-da in Bandol. It's like a rosé you age. And I went, I don't know if I want to age it, but it's a big one. I'm going to send you some of that, Nick, so you can try it. So,
Kim, I tried it, and that's one of the biggest rosés I've had in a long time. Absolutely. When you want to compare it to Bandol, one of those icon French rosés, that's
it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's huge.
And we hand-pick that because I can't machine pick that. And we do about 4 tons, and that goes, we don't destem it. It's all whole cluster pressed out. But it was very ripe, and it's a big rosé. So any other questions about our rosé?
Kim, I have just one more because I actually looked at the vintage on my bottle, and it's actually 2017. And I got to tell you, you've still got that wine drinking so beautiful, so bright, so fresh. It's got a little extra creaminess to it. And it's absolutely a delight to drink.
Nick, and I'm glad you brought that up because I judge in a competition called TechSom, which is owned by 2 master somms. It's the hardest competition in the country. You can read about it. And they're always giving me crap because they don't think I age my wines long enough. And they said, gosh, Kim, these wines of yours, they get so much better after a couple of years on them. I'm like, but I have bills to pay. But they are right. Nick, this rosé is actually incredible. And it's, 2 years old. And some people go, that's too old for a rosé. No, not really. So, I think this thing is drinking beautiful. So thanks for bringing that up.
I would agree with you. And here's my little plug for some of your other wines that I enjoy aging a little bit. That Tre Colare has been on a tear, and that's been drinking as one of my go-to bottles of wine. In fact, I've been replacing a lot of Pinot Noirs with that all over the place, and everybody doesn't bat an eyelid. And then, of course, I'm always going to be a fan of your straight Cinsault whenever that comes available.
Well, now that's we're I'm going to tell you what we're doing. We've created a whole new. Since you brought that up, Nick, this guy got a story about him. So I was looking in my Esquire magazine, and they had, I got to go off of this, and they had this Le Creuset roaster that was designed in the 50s by this big something, and it was one of a kind, and they were only going to do it for 1 year. And we went to a little wine shop, and next door was the Le Creuset shop, and they had one in that blue, and he shipped it to me. I bought it, and he shipped it to me. And it's the coolest thing. I use that thing all the time. I don't know what it is. It's some big designer, but they don't make it anymore. You remember that story?
I absolutely remember that story.
That was that French place. I don't know what their names were.
Indeed, that was the Landrigan family who own Cork and Fork down in Washington, D.C., who they actually texted me earlier today to send my regards to you. And we can talk about that another time.
Okay, another time. Okay, so where were we?
We're going to drink a red wine, I think. What would you like to try next, your Windblown or your La Herencia?
We're going to try the Windblown.
Okay. So EVS Windblown, the next one, the one with the super pretty label, that actually is one of Kim's vineyards. So if you've got an idea of what you think Texas looks like and what the high plains look like, all you got to do is look at your bottle and remind you this is actually where your wine comes from.
That's Mourvèdre right there. That vineyard right there is Mourvèdre. Let me finish this, Jose.
Kim,
Pinky,
I have a little treasure that I found today. And we
what?
have wine that I still hadn't unpacked from our move. And I unpacked it today, and I found a 2014 Windblown.
Ooh, that may be the first one.
Yes, it's,
I'd like to know how that's drinking.
huh?
I'd like to know how that's drinking.
Oh, we're gonna try.
We'll let you know.
We will definitely let you know.
We will let you know.
We'll find
You
out
should
in a
all stare at
second.
Pinky and watch her drink it.
You have your glass.
Okay, this is a wine that's sort of a,
I was going to ask you, so yeah.
this is a Rhone blend, and this is a funny story. The label, y'all ever heard of Garden and Gun magazine?
Yeah.
Well, they came over here and did a story, and they brought a photographer out of Austin, Texas. This guy was plenty good. And so this picture was the beginning of that article in the magazine. And when I saw that picture, I said, man, that would make the coolest looking label. Well, $1,000 later, that's my picture. I own that now, but it made an incredible label. And it's really pretty label when it was all in color and everything, but I had it stylized out. But EVS means earth, vine, sky, and the V is a 5, and there's always 5 varietals in this wine. And this is all Rhone blended. This is, now every year is going to be a little different, but this one's Mourvèdre, Petit Soir, Carignan, Cinsault, and Grenache. Now, this following one, it's got a lot more Syrah in it, a lot more Mourvèdre and Carignan. So every year it's a little darker, maybe it's not. We added the Cinsault for lightening up the body a little bit. And it does see oak. It goes into French oak for about a year. And we only do about 950 to 1,000 cases of this every year. Now this is my label that if Texas would go national, this would be a national label I think that we could use from Texas. But you know, we only do a little bit of it. But we just bottled the 19 today, and I wasn't going to bottle it this quick, but I had to get it out of barrels, and so we bottled it today. Now you won't see that for a couple of years probably. So anyway, try this wine.
We both have questions here.
Okay, let me have your questions.
So you used a cork in this bottle, in this wine.
Right.
Is there a particular reason you used a cork instead of?
Yeah, we do go on some of our reds. We will use a. Do you see the cork?
Right.
All right. Look at that cork.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cork.
That's called a Diam.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many first growth chateaus going to this cork. You will never have TCA with this cork. That means a corky wine, because it's the way they produce it. That's real cork. But the cool thing about this company is that they take all the scraps and everything else from all these other cork companies, and they grind it up really fine, and they take everything out of it with liquid CO2,
Mm-hmm.
and they put this cork together with vegetable gums. And so it's a really neat cork, and it's so sealable that you don't even have to put the bottle upside down. It seals it up. Now, if you look on that thing, it'll say, and anytime you look look at a French cork nowadays. Does it say Diam 10 on it? This one says Diam 10. It should say Diam 10. You see that? Start looking for this cork in French wines for sure.
We need
I mean, this cork is guaranteed for 10 years.
Oh, right
at
here.
least.
Yeah, there we go.
You'll find Diam 3, Diam 5, Diam 10. They have Diam 30s. They have a really cool cork put together with beeswax. But, you know, these corks are really nice. The funny thing is Gallo represents those corks in America. And so in TX, what do they think? You think they use?
Yes.
So anyway, really neat cork. So let's taste this wine.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
First off,
While we're drinking this wine, can we do a little bit of a true or
was
false?
that a wiener dog?
No, he looks like it. He's 50% Chihuahua, Australian cattle dog, and gray wolf. Can't you tell?
Yeah.
He's out here barking at his sister because she's honing in on his screen time. Hey, Kim, I remember long ago, far, far away, that I heard a story about EVS Windblown that you can either confirm or deny for everybody here. Once upon a time, I believe there was a small little gathering called the Aspen Food and Wine Festival. And true or false, that might have been the impetus for where you and a couple other wonderful troublemakers, one you've already mentioned, Dave Finney, and another guy named Charles Beeler. Was there something about those guys that plays into the background of this wine?
Well, yeah, Beeler was instrumental in kind of giving us like a little seed to go on. Finney, of course, you know, he's. You ever heard his podcast? I mean, well, he doesn't do a podcast. I heard him on a podcast. You know, he's an incredible guy. I mean, he's, you know. Anyway, yeah, they gave us the what do you call it? The dynamics to make this wine. To say, man, we can do this. We ought to do this. And yeah, Charlie Beeler. Yeah.
I heard there was a little drinking and maybe some sunshine that came up that also helped push this project forward.
Well, not Beeler was there, but Finney was there. Yeah, Dave, I could hang out with that guy. He's a good guy. You know, he's done very well. I'm just proud to know him. So, and what he does with wines and his marketing and his labels are, I mean, it's genius on some of his stuff. So.
Yeah, but it's no James Beard Award semifinalist, you know.
Well, no, but you know, he sold his wine with Gallo. Yeah, I'd love to do that too.
I'm gonna help pat Kim on the back a little bit here, because for those of you that aren't familiar with the James Beard Awards and just what it means, James Beard, amazing gourmand, the James Beard House is one of the greatest food and wine destinations. To be invited there to cook is a huge, huge honor. And every single year they look at the entire restaurant and now the beer and wine and spirits industry and decide who do they think is doing just the best job. And for 2 years in a row now, the modest man down here leading this wine tasting has been a semifinalist for the best example of beer, wine, or spirits in all of America.
Thank you. A brewery won it the first time up in Maine.
Allagash is pretty good.
That's it. They're a pretty good brewery, though. You know, what are you going to do?
Well, listen, they've been around just a couple years longer than you, so I guess that means next year's your year, right?
Well, I can hope. You know, just being a semifinalist is pretty big, they say.
I'm pretty excited for you, Kim.
So, I'm glad that we can represent Texas. You know, we can do a lot of things down here if we set our mind to it. You know, this Mourvedre is probably the #1 red grape. You know, everybody says Tempranillo, but all my big growers say Mourvedre is one of the varieties that does so well here. Loves the heat, good producer, and makes beautiful wines. So,
Kim, can I, you mentioned Tempranillo, and when I tasted this wine, I said it tasted Italian.
It's not. Tempranillo is not Italian.
Sorry. Sorry, my daughter's the expert. Sorry about that.
well, you know,
But does it taste Italian to you?
this wine?
Yeah.
Well, no. This wine tastes. I'll tell you what I like these. I love the little Rhone blends, and this tastes a lot like I don't know, a Rhone wine that you would find Southern Rhone. It's got all the varietals, and except Petite Syrah, but I like Petite Syrah. But in France, it's called de Rief. So, but
That's a
Syrah.
French name, Durif, isn't it?
Huh?
I said Durif sounds super sexy in French, doesn't it?
Yes, de Rief. So, but Petite Syrah does well here. Now, Syrah is like this. Syrah goes up and down, up and down. And it's like that all over the world. One year you get this, next year you don't get any. Vignet's like that. So, but Syrah does fairly well here. Carignan, now that's a grape that's an old, well, it's actually native to Spain. They call it Carignan or Marsuelo, but it was grown in the southern French. It's one of the legal grapes that you can use in Rhone, and it's one of my dad's favorite grapes. He planted that in 1976 here. And of course, Carignan, you couldn't give it away. It was one of those Central Valley grapes in California that they made just cheap red wine out of. Now, in California, if you can find any old vine Carignan, it's probably $7,000 or $8,000 a ton. And that's with all these young winemakers. They'd love to see that old vine Carignan. And so it does it very well here. And it was one of my dad's favorite grapes. So that's why Carignan is a big grape for us, which I'm going to come to this, Nick, at the end. I've got a big story. So what do y'all think of this little Rhone? See, those two girls there, they're trouble. I could see that right there. Marilyn, laughing and
Actually,
laughing.
I got a question.
I do too, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Question. It's for both you and Nick. This is absolutely marvelous. And right now I have a dog in my lap, which is telling me how excellent it really is. But what food would you serve with this?
Oh my
The
God.
rosé was easy. I'm thinking spiced shrimp. I'm thinking paella. This I'm having trouble zeroing into.
Lamb.
Well,
I'm going to try it with
Pork
lamb.
roast, any sort of a spaghetti tomato sauce thing.
I'm going to say
Roast
don't
chicken,
overthink
coq
it.
de vin. What? There's
Don't-
all
don't-
kinds.
Don't overthink it on this wine. So, Kim's inspiration is Côte du Rhône, which whenever I was in a wine shop was always the thing that I recommended to anyone that was going to somebody's house where they knew they liked wine, but you weren't exactly sure what they liked. There's a very friendly, open, easy drinking aspect to most of those Rhône-inspired wines. But I would say this weekend, you couldn't ask for a more perfect wine to go with your traditional Memorial Day cookouts. You bounce just about anything off the grill and serve it up with a bottle of Windblown, you're going to have yourself a happy time.
Good. So some good
Yes.
Szechuan tofu and
Yeah,
Anything-
I
Spice
don't have
food.
any rules for my wine drinking. It's like, sometimes. Well, I had the Windblown before I took a bottle home last night out of the tank, and I had that with chicken sausage and ratatouille, a little bit of ratatouille, and it was incredible. So, but I had that tomato in, and I have the the chicken feta spinach sausage. So it was delicious with that. I'm not I think my daughter in Napa, she goes, Dad, why did you do that? And you go, I drink wine, Do you like that wine? You ought to drink that while you make dinner.
we do.
There you go. That's how you ought to do that.
I did a mushroom and basil
yeah.
risotto, and that was
that's
beautiful
good.
with this wine because you got that little earthiness from the mushrooms, and that just comes across really easy. But again, you want to play around with something with, take your pick, any type of mushroom whatsoever. That combination of richness and earthiness, this wine will just cover all those flavors and just accent everything to bring them all right up.
That's great,
chicken
Nick.
thighs and garlic and rosemary, that herb chicken. This would be beautiful with that. Dark meats, roasted meats. So anyway, y'all have any other questions about this one?
I do. Well, first of all, I think lamb. with
Oh
the-
yeah, lamb would be. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my next question is also kind of related to lamb because I'm Greek, but I'm wondering about the actual vines and grapes because just thinking about the wind aspect.
Yeah,
Uh,
it can
which-
be.
Which
Yeah, it's like
vines and grapes in this bottle are all of these grapes grown in Texas?
they are grown 35 miles south of me.
Great. Okay.
In an area called Terry County, Brownfield. It is, yes, it is wind blown.
Nick,
The wind does blow here. It's like, well, you know, in Rhone, the Mistral, it blows all the time, and the average wind speed in the Rhone is about 18 miles an hour. That's about right for here. So these vines do struggle a little bit.
well,
you
Nick,
know.
this part is for Nick then, because I think you were there at Vasily's when that guy from Greece came and he talked about the way the vines kind of grow weirdly. They're not like, they don't go like this. They kind of protect themselves. Do you remember that?
So again, what they've done a little bit differently with cannabis, if you take a look at that label picture, you see the canopy is high up to give you that sun protection, but also to allow that wind to come rolling through, because too much wind, while it can be a problem, is something you have to deal with. But some wind helps to make sure you got airflow around the grapes, keeps the grape cool, and then when it gets really sunny and everything else, that's where the wind becomes your ally if you do your vineyard management right.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Okay, good.
These are very close spaced vines too. They're like 3 by the rows, or maybe the vines are 3 or 4 feet apart by, you know, 7-foot rows. It's very close spacing. There's probably 900 vines per acre on this type of stuff.
Wow.
So and the production is the average production, like on Mourvèdre, is probably 3 to 4 tons to the acre. That's mainly how we gauge, and sometimes our growers have to cut stuff off, especially with Carignan. It can be a very big producer. So 3 to 5. 5 is really pushing it for us. So
thank you.
So
yeah,
just
no
to
problem.
kind of de-geek that a little bit, so your standard for a lot of wineries is to go 5 by 5 spacing is what they're doing in between the vines and in the rows. And so, you know, by compacting that a little bit, again, you're helping to protect the vineyard a little bit more and to get that denser canopy. Before we move on to the next wine, though, I think we need to put Miss Pinky, our co-host, on the spot here, because
Where'd she go?
she's got that older bottle, and we need to know how it's drinking, Kim.
Where's Pinky?
It
Where'd
tastes
she go?
completely differently than when I first had this wine. This has, I don't know whether you can see this, but you can actually see the difference in the color of this now. It has a little bit of that rust color around. It is absolutely beautiful. I will tell you that the finish on this is the longest finish that I've ever had on any of your wines.
Well, thank you.
Just so long, and these are bottles that I will buy again, like I did these before, and lay them down and enjoy them 5 to 10 years from now, because honestly, this is brilliant. So much so that my neighbors have just said, Pinky, you need to organize a trip down to your winery.
We're gonna come.
We're there.
We're there.
Well, guess what now, man? You're not even going to believe this. Well, you can believe it. I had this. I live near the college. Okay, so you got college kids, you got rent houses. You know all this. And so I had a rent house across the street from me, and I got so sick and tired of it that I just bought it. And so I'm making that my Airbnb for my winery.
Awesome! Yay! We're coming.
Okay, chamber road trip.
We can do that.
As I speak, there's sheetrock in it right now after I've totally gutted it. And I just, and my wife thought I was nuts. She came up with the idea, and she goes, I didn't think you were going to do that. And I did it, kind of behind her back. But anyway.
Let us know when it's open and open for business.
I can't wait. I'm getting the sheetrock up, and then I'm gonna have the floors done. So I'm gonna send y'all a picture when it's done. It's Austin stone, so it's this white stone. So anyway, yeah, I'm gonna have an Airbnb for the winery.
Kim,
We're gonna hog tie Seal and John Colleton too to come with us.
Do what now? Say that?
I'm gonna hog tie Seal and John Colleton to come with us.
Okay, y'all, that's up to you.
Marion, Susan, definitely Stephen. He doesn't have a choice.
Absolutely, us too. Road trip. I love you, Pinky. I
3-bedroom Airbnb. Okay?
Yes.
And I bought all my kitchen stuff. I mean, all my kitchen shelves and all that stuff. I got it over here in my winery in boxes. I've ordered it all special made. So it's sitting over here in my event center. So, hey, we have a new friend here. Who's at the bottom here? She can't hear.
Huh?
That's Laura. No, that's
everybody's thing is different. Everybody's configuration is different.
hey, but Kim, while we're on the subject of across the street from your winery, I don't know if everybody who got the rosé noticed that beautiful little picture, but maybe you could tell them a little bit more about your winery and its.
Oh yeah, see the picture on the back of the rosé is the old Coca-Cola bottling plant that was built in 1930. And so I have the whole block. I'm an urban winery, and I wanted to be in the city because I wanted water and electricity and sewage, so I didn't have to worry about well water and water treatment out in the country like I had before. So I said, I'm going to do it in the city. So I do have a good neighbor. Right across from this catty corner from the McPherson sign on that label is the Mercedes dealership here. So I have a good neighbor right over here. So we're in kind of, a good area, but we're in downtown Lubbock. And the city's been very good to me because, they're trying to revitalize downtown and do a lot of stuff. So anyway, that's it. Okay. Oh, the La Herencia. All right. Little story about this. This is really Tempranillo. I could call it Tempranillo legally, which we are going to put it on the label now because people don't get, well, they do and they don't. But La Herencia is my Spanish, my hat tipping to Spanish wine because it is a blend of all the Spanish varietals, a lot of them. You've got Mourvèdre, which is Motaro. You've got Grenache. The only one is not Syrah, but it's close enough. Then you've got Carignan. And we make a blend up. And La Herencia is means the inheritance or the heritage, but I've spent the inheritance. So anyway, this wine is an incredible blend. It came from 200 cases, and now we're doing 1,800 cases of it. It's one of our most popular red wines. And it does have the Tempranillo. And so, Marilyn, I want you to try this. This one is 82% Tempranillo. So by law, I can call it Tempranillo. Now, if you go to the Rioja, you're always going to find they'll have Grenache in them. They'll have Graciano. I don't know if you'll see Mourvèdre, but you might. But this year we'll have Graciano in it. The 19 vintage has some Graciano in it. So try this one and tell me what you think of this. This is one of our most popular wines right here. Now Tempranillo, they call it Tempranillo because it's early. And this grape ripens in July here, where everything else is in September. So this is the first red that comes off. Now this is very, I don't know, this is a grape that I find that if you blend stuff with it, it makes it better. Maybe that's why the Spanish blend Graciano or Grenache with it. Everyone having this?
Kim, I'm finding I've always enjoyed this wine. I really think this is one of the most fun wines that I've had when thinking about traditional Texas barbecue. I always said this is my brisket wine, the thing that I want to have with that more than anything else.
Right.
But I find there's a little smoke component that's a little bit bigger or a little more noticeable in this vintage than in the past before. Was that due to the weather and the vintage that year, or
That's due to the only Tempranillo that that we use in this is from one of my best growers, Andy Timmons. And this is grown at his house, which is actually only about 10 miles from the winery. And he has 5 acres of Tempranillo there, which we only use in this La Herencia. It's very dark. It can be intense. The one thing that I think you'll find in my wines, which we try to do here, is we try to have an old world feel. So I think if you put a brown bag around this and you were pouring it for people, they would probably say, "God, this is a Spanish one." You go, "Yeah," and that's what I'm trying to do here. Is that this has it has that Spanish old world feel to me, which I like. It doesn't have a new world flavors. It's got it just has enough oak and enough character to it that it's like a little Crianza or something, but it has a screw cap.
Well, again, I find this to be one of those ones that is one of the more savory options that you put out there year after year after year. It always has that nice hook.
Yeah, I really like this one. It's very balanced.
Thank you. This is one of our biggest sellers right here. Their biggest Sangiovese.
I can tell why.
is our flagship wine, only because my dad was the first guy to plant Sangiovese in Texas in 1983.
Wow.
And it was an Antinori clone. And so we run out of Sangiovese every year. We only do about 1,300 cases. We're out of it for about 3 months. And then we always have another one. We bring it on. So this is one of our favorite reds. In the tasting room, it's a big one for us. And so we did do this year, we did 250 cases of a straight Tempranillo, 100% Tempranillo from Andy's vineyard, which because of this year was so incredible that we kept it separate, some of it, just for a Tempranillo. Nick, I'd like to, I tell you what I'm doing, and my young assistant winemaker who has been with me 9 years now, he knows that I always like to do weird stuff, but he came up with a lot of these ideas. But my daughter and him teamed up kind of, and we are doing it, for a lack of a better term, we're doing a luxury series. It's not going to be called that, but last year we had some most incredible reds come in. We had Petit Syrah, Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre, and Carignan, and Cinsault. And we have 10 barrels of each. Newer oak, incredible barrels, and we're not going to use heavy glass anymore. Okay, so if you'll notice that, well, we really don't use heavy glass, but we're going to use just regular glass. We're going to go back to old school. I'm having a designer in Napa do a new label that's going to be a McPherson, but it's going to be cork finish. And we're only doing 250 cases of each of these varietals. And we may not have 6 every year. We may only have 4. We go to the growers. We do 2 tons to the acre. We have them cut off fruit. And I think what it will do is really showcase what these varietals can do in Texas. So I hope you like this one. But we don't have a Tempranillo in that one yet, but we may. So. What any questions about this wine?
Wondering if you could first of all spell Mourvèdre and then tell us a little bit more about it.
Mourvèdre is Mourvedre. They say Mourvèdre. It is the main grape of Bandol in southern France. That's the main. It's like Cabernet and Merlot and Bordeaux, but Mourvèdre is the big grape there. It is Martaro. There's another name. It's the Spanish name for it, but it's a very, very old grape. It is native to Spain. Now, see, you have the French and the Spanish going, no, Mourvèdre is, from southern France. No. It was native to Spain. But I have the Bible by Jancis Robbins called Wine Grapes of the World, and it's got every grape. If you can find that book on Amazon, you should buy it. It's the most incredible book. they did all this DNA testing on all the grapes.
And
And
what's it
there's
called
not
again?
a grape in there that you can't, from Russia all the way to China, to Japan, all over the world. And they'll tell you about where these grapes came from. You know, where a priest grew it in the Rhone by a castle, or you know, it's an unbelievable book. Look it up. Back in the day, it was about $300, but you can probably get it for $150 now. I don't know, off Amazon. Jancis Robbins, Wine Grapes of the World, and so you can read all about Mourvedre. And there's what it's commonly mistaken for, how it tastes, where it's grown, the disease problems you have with it, where it was first discovered. You know, like Picpoul Blanc. We grow Picpoul. Well, that grape was first discovered in the 1300s in France. So, you know, you have all these little stories, and they do all the DNA on it. And so it's a wonderful book. Now, some people may argue with it, but I think it's a great, you could just read that all day long. I'm going to look up that grape. I'm going to look up Syrah. I'm going to look up Muscat.
So Emily just looked it up. It's like what,
$140.
$140 for the book.
You can also use it as another wall for your house, though. It's a giant book. When they say coffee table book, the book is the coffee table, and you can put other books on top of it.
But I go to that book all the time. Now, you know, they spell Picpoul Blanc about 4 different ways. They spell Cinsault like 4 different ways. And the government says, I can't have a T on my Cinsault, or I can't have this, an L in my Cinsault. So I have to spell it like the government wants.
No, the ebook is 75. The ebook is 75. So
Well,
Yeah, but you don't want the ebook.
I like to have it when I'm sitting there, I like to have it in my hand. You know what I mean? Like the newspaper, like the Post. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, get that book. Is an incredible book. There's so many, all your native grapes, and up in your area, the native grapes, Concord, Niagara. You'll learn all about them. It's a fabulous book.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You know what could go wrong?
Kim?
Thank you.
Kim, quick question.
Okay.
As a beer guy, a Cicerone,
Yeah.
I want to know what your thoughts are on the recent trend to age beer in wine barrels, whether it was brut IPAs or porters and stouts in Cabernet barrels. What is your thought on that?
Well, let me say this: that I've got a lot of breweries here in Texas, small breweries. They love to take my barrels, and you know they like to leave them outside. They go, "You got any bad barrels?" I don't have any bad barrels, but I got barrels that are old, and I get rid of them. But that's where they make their sour beers. They love the crappy beer.
I'm not a particular fan of sours myself, but.
And that's what they buy them for. They go, Kim, we need like.
Oh. Yeah.
Legs.
I think we lost them.
You froze.
Nick, we lost them.
Sour beer. The wine's worth
Hey! Hey!
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? So they make sour beers, and they love sour beers. And these young people, they love these beers. You know. I'm like a purist. I love a pilsner, and I like a lager, and you know, most of these brew pubs, they just brew. They're really ales, if you really want to know the truth, because they brew them in about a week.
I already know the truth. I am a brewer. But.
Well, there you go. I used to own part of a brewery. I put the brewery in. And ales, you know, you can kick them out in 7-8 days, and they cost about $0.10 to produce a pint. And you know, boom! We had a 15-barrel brewing system, and you know, but we used to make a lager. We made a Munich Helles, and it was like incredible. But it takes 6 weeks to do, and so there's no money in it. So you know why the English have ales? Because of Lucas Electrics. They're bad. They're bad electric. So the refrigerators would always fail. So you had warm beer in England. So
Yeah.
that's why your ales are like, what do you serve them at? I don't know, 45, 50, 60 degrees. So
Right,
anyway,
but every brewery these days is making their own. I'm talking about aging in wine barrels.
you know, the big thing now in the wine is making bourbon barrel Cabernet or bourbon barrel Zinfandel, which, you know, I haven't done that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get into that. You know, the funny thing about those bourbon barrels when they do that is that it jacks the alcohol up in the wine by about 2%. And even in an empty barrel, you go, how does that happen? Well, it just happens. So if you have a 13 and a half Cabernet or 14 Cabernet, then it goes up to about 16 once you take it out of the barrels. And you can't leave it in there long.
Yeah.
It will just tear a wine up. So it's like 3 or 4 months and you got to take it out.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
That's a fad deal to me, but that's, you know, whatever.
Exactly.
So
Any
Kim,
other questions?
you talked about the glass
Yes.
and the thickness of the glass. Tell me more about that.
Well, you know that you can go down to your wine shop and you can buy a Napa Valley Cab or some big wine, and you have a real heavy bottle. And to me, you know, that bottle's probably $1.50. And it's the same thing is a glass that you can go to. There's a winery in Napa called Mayacamas, which has been there since the 1850s. It's a cult winery, and the fact that they don't make a lot, and it's a Cabernet that's from Mount Veeder. It's probably the most, I would say it's one of the Cabernets that most represent a Bordeaux, if you had a Bordeaux. Low alcohol, 13.5, 13.6 alcohol, but they use this normal old claret bottle like you'd find in just a simple package, but the wines are incredible. So it doesn't really matter about the glass. So ecologically, we decided not to use heavy glass anymore and just use a regular punted claret bottle. But because at the end of the day, you're going to hopefully recycle it. And I always put on my wines, recycle this bottle, please recycle this bottle. So anyway, but heavy glass is a sales thing. It's a marketing thing. You think,
Thank you.
oh man, it's in a heavy glass, I got to pay more. No, it's
So I have a question. I believe you mentioned that the Chenin Blanc was steel aged. Do you do any barrel aging?
Well, that's funny you should say that. We made a reserve Chenin Blanc, which we had in oak, and we stirred the lees, and we did, and we haven't done anything with that yet, but we're looking at bottling it as a reserve Chenin, but it's a big Chenin. I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have a reserve Roussanne, and I know Nick's had it, that's barrel aged on the lees. We stir the lees. It's in the barrels for 7 or 8 months. We pull it out, and it's a big wine. It's probably the closest thing we have to like a big Chardonnay. Okay, because we don't, you know, we don't do Chardonnay, but it's like that. It's kind of thick and oily and really nice and mouth-filling. So we only do about 200 cases of that.
So, Kim, I think that's a perfect segue. I know we have to wrap this up, so I have 2 small little favors. The first one is going to be for you specifically, Kim. With all these great new wines that you've just been working and bottling up, aside from this new luxury Kim McPherson line that we have to look forward to, what else are you most excited about that everybody should be looking for in the next couple of months that you might be sending to us?
Well, you know, I really don't have anything new on this deal. I mean, we're going to do another natural wine.
Well, it doesn't have to be new. I just meant maybe one of the new vintages or something that you said, you know what,
Well,
this is my favorite wine.
I have an artist buddy, a nut artist buddy I've known for 40 years, and he keeps saying, when are you going to do a label for him? When are you going to do a label? So we did a label out of these really cool cactuses. It's called Les Espines, and it's a Grenache Rosé, 100%.
Nice.
And, I need to send you some of that. Andrew would love that. And so
I
it's
love Grenache Rosé.
painting, and you're going to love it. It's a painting of his, and it's all the, you know, and that's what he does. And so that we've got it bottled, but we don't have it labeled.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. And in the meanwhile, Kim,
I'm gonna have a bottle of that tonight.
don't get jealous. Kim, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day. I want to thank you on behalf of Pinky, whose laptop battery just died, and she wasn't able to properly say her thanks to you with all the issues that she had.
Kim, thank you so much on behalf of the chamber and Pinky and Nick and everybody that was on here. And thank you so much to Pinky's regulars that were on here today. I mean, that was just fantastic. And so
How about one last cheers to
that's
Kim,
all.
Chamber of Commerce for making
Always
us
like
happy.
going to Pinky store.
Cheers, indeed.
Cheers.
Hey, let's do this again, Nick. We'll do it.
Yeah. These are delicious wines. We've really enjoyed them.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank you all for having us, because this was right up there with the best of Nick and Pinky productions over the years. Kim, it's been great listening to you.
Yes.
And there'll be a road trip if Pinky says there will be a road trip.
I hope so.
I want to be with
Forward to hearing about the Airbnb.
All right.
Two glasses.
For reminding us how much we miss you,
We're gonna
and
get
we'll
that
be
book.
together again.
Get that book, right?
I take no credit for Kim being a fantastic winemaker. He did it all on his own. I'm just happy to be a part of it. Kim,
I have a team. We got a good team.
Laura, thank you so much. Marilyn, thank you so much.
everybody.
And so let me just say, we're thinking about rescheduling our wine tasting in September. We just simply don't know what the environment's going to be like. But as our stalwarts know, our wine tasting event is one of our premier events, and we love it. And and what's great about this environment is we got to learn so much about the wines. And so I thank you, Kim, for that. That's great.
It was fantastic, Kim. Thank you so much.
Right before this thing hit, I did the Charleston Wine and Food Festival. They invited me down there to do that, and that thing is incredible. And I'd love to come to your deal. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we'll let you know next year. I assume that we're going to have an in-person event next year. We'll let you know when it is.
All right, keep the fire.
Okay, 2-1.
Good to see everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
The bottom of my heart, thank you.
I don't know where Pinky went, but bye-bye.
She's back. Wait, she's back. Bye.
Come
Oh,
back.
wait, she's back. Is Pinky back?
Hi, I'm sorry.
She's
We've had
fine.
major technical difficulties at our harbor today. We thought being on the bay was going to be great, and I'm so sorry. But I have to say, I can't thank Kim enough. I called Kim to get recommendations on what to pour, and he's like, I'll do it. And that's exactly how he was. When Nick first brought him into our store, I was like, Texas? You've got to be kidding me. And we ended up bringing in Tricolor, La Herencia, all of your wines, and they sold beautifully. And from the bottom of my heart, I cannot begin to thank you. And we are going to plan a road trip.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to do so, and I pray that I can help us.
I want to have a hats off to my guy Thomas Turman, who's the GM here, and he's the most incredible IT guy. But he worked for Apple, so what do you think? But anyway, he set all this up, and he's behind me over here in front of
Oh,
me.
thank you, Thomas.
So Kim, how many people can fit in your Airbnb? Kim, how many people can fit in your Airbnb? Because we have a busload coming.
3 bedrooms and have a parlor too. So
Okay, we'll be there.
okay, y'all come on, bring it on. We'll go in.
Yep.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you,
Tony
Pinky.
and
Hey,
Stephen,
Kim.
John and Seal.
Bye.
Thank you, Nick.